The rain was heavy that night. Cold wind blew through the streets of Sector 9. It was the place where no one wanted to go. Broken machines, trash piles, and old cargo crates filled the alleys. It smelled like oil, smoke, and sorrow. She lay there curled, up in a corner, shaking. Her skin was pale blue, her hair dark and wet from the rain. No one knew her name. She didn't even remember it herself. To most, she was just another forgotten alien left behind after the war. Tossed aside like trash dot, she had no clothes, just a torn piece of fabric wrapped around her body. Her arms were thin, her ribs visible. She had not eaten in days. She had stopped crying 2 days ago. Now she only stared at the ground, waiting for the end. A group of humans walked by, talking and laughing. One of them pointed at her. "Another stray," he said, spitting on the ground. "She won't last the night." They walked away, but one man didn't. He stood still. He wore a long coat, soaked by the rain. He had a rough beard and tired eyes. His name was Kyle. He looked at the alien girl in silence. For a moment, he thought of walking away too. He had problems of his own. Rent was late. Food was low. The government hated aliens. Helping one would only bring trouble. But still, she looked up at him. Her eyes were large, bright, scared, not of him, just of the world. Kyle knelt down. "Can you hear me?" he asked softly. She blinked and slowly nodded. "Are you hurt?" She nodded again. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Out, Kyle looked around. No one cared. No one stopped. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her thin shoulders. She shivered inside it. "I can't leave you here," he muttered. "You'll die." She didn't reply, but her eyes stayed locked on him like she was trying to believe that he was real. Kyle picked her up. She was so light, it shocked him, like carrying air. Her body trembled in his arms, but she didn't fight him. She only closed her eyes and leaned her head against his chest. His apartment was small and quiet. The walls were old. The heater barely worked, but it was dry. Kyle laid her on the couch. She was asleep before her head touched the pillow. He brought a blanket. Then he made soup, cheap, instant stuff, but it was hot. He placed the bowl on the table beside her. He didn't ask her questions. He didn't know if she could even speak. That night, Kyle sat on the floor, watching her breathe. Her arms were wrapped around herself tightly, like she expected someone to hit her at any moment. "What happened to you?" he whispered. The scars on her arms were deep, some fresh, some old. Lines that told stories he didn't want to imagine. The next morning, she woke up suddenly and looked around in panic. "Hey," Kyle said, holding up his hands. "You're safe. You're in my home." She stared at him. "Do you have a name?" She didn't speak. He tried again. "I'm Kyle." Still nothing. Then slowly, she pointed at her chest. Myra," she whispered. He smiled. "Myra, that's a nice name." Her eyes watered. Not because she was sad, but because someone had said her name kindly. It had been so long. She reached for the soup and sipped it. It was cold now, but she ate all of it. Kyle watched her in silence, feeling something strange inside his chest. He had seen many aliens before. Most stayed away from humans. Many feared them, but this Myra was different. She wasn't just wounded. She was broken, but maybe, just maybe, she could be whole again. That night, as the rain fell again, Kyle stood by the window, thinking. He knew this wouldn't be easy. The government didn't allow aliens to stay in human zones without permission. If anyone found out he was hiding her, he could be arrested. But when he turned and saw Myra curled up on his couch, wrapped in his coat, breathing softly, He knew he had made the right choice. He walked over, sat beside her, and gently whispered, "You can stay here, Myra. You don't have to be afraid." She opened her eyes, looked at him. For the first time, she gave a small nod. And that night, in the middle of a cruel world, something gentle began. The alarm buzzed, but Kyle was already awake. He hadn't slept much. Not because of noise or cold, but because he kept checking to see if she was still breathing. Mira, the alien girl he found on the street. She looked small on his couch, curled up like a child. The blanket had slipped to the floor during the night, so Kyle gently picked it up and placed it back over her. Her skin was still cold. He sighed. "You need better clothes." Later that morning, Kyle went to the market. It wasn't a safe place for humans who asked too many questions. So he didn't ask. He just bought a second-hand coat, soft boots, and some warm food. When he returned, Mira was awake, sitting in the same spot, staring at the wall. She didn't move when he entered. She looked tired, like her soul was older than her body. "Got you something," he said gently. She turned her head slowly. Kyle placed the coat and boots beside her. "They're not perfect, but they'll help." Mira looked at them, then at him. Her hands touched the fabric like it was something rare and special. "You can wear them," he added. "They're yours now." She hesitated, then stood up slowly. Her legs were weak, and she almost fell. Kyle caught her. "Easy," he said, steadying her. "You're safe here." For a moment, their eyes met. She didn't speak, but her look said more than words. She was trying to trust him. It was hard, but she was trying. The day passed quietly. Kyle made simple food, eggs and toast. Myra ate, slowly, as if unsure if the food was really hers. Later, she walked around the apartment. She touched the walls, looked out the window, and stared at the small plant on his table. She pressed her fingers gently on the leaves, as if it might disappear. She pointed at the plant. Kyle smiled. "That's a fern." "Fern," she whispered. He nodded. "You like it?" She gave a tiny smile and nodded back. That night, Kyle gave her his bed. "I'll take the couch," he said. Myra shook her head. She didn't want him to sleep on the floor for her. "It's okay," he said, trying to smile. "You need it more than I do." She looked down, quiet. Then slowly she sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't lie down. She just sat there, staring at the floor. Kyle sat on the couch and turned off the lights. Silence filled the room. Then, after a long pause, he heard her voice, soft, broken. "Why?" Kyle opened his eyes. "Why what? Why? Help." He turned to look at her through the dark. "Because you needed it," he said, "and no one else did." She didn't speak again. But after some time, she lay down and slept. The next day, Kyle found something strange. He had a small bookshelf in his room. Old books, nothing special. But one was missing. He found Mira sitting in the corner, the book open in her lap. She couldn't read all the words, but she was looking at the pictures. She looked up at him, holding the book close. "You can keep it," he said. She nodded, hugging it tightly. That evening, as they sat together in silence, Mira pointed to herself. "Mira," she said. Then she pointed to him. "Kyle," he nodded. "Yes." She looked at him seriously. "Safe?" Kyle didn't answer right away. He reached over and gently placed his hand on hers. "Yes," he said. "You're safe here. I promise." She stared at their hands, then looked into his eyes. In that moment, something changed. Not just between them, but inside Myra. The fear was still there. But now there was something else too. Hope. But outside that small apartment. Danger was already moving. In the higher districts. A report was sent out. A missing subject. A female. Alien experiment. Escaped from Sector 7. Last seen in human territory. Wanted alive. And someone was already watching. Asterisk Kyle was dreaming. In the dream, he heard a scream sharp high and full of pain. Then he woke up. It wasn't a dream. The scream was real. He jumped off the couch, heart racing. The apartment was dark. Another scream followed, and it came from his bedroom. Myra! He rushed in and found her curled into the corner of the bed, shaking. Her arms covered her face. She was whispering something in her language over and over again. Kyle turned on the small lamp beside the bed. Myra flinched, her eyes wild with fear. "It's me," he said softly. "It's Kyle. You're safe. You're safe now." She stared at him, confused, lost. Kyle didn't move closer. He just sat on the floor beside the bed. "I won't touch you," he said gently, "but I'll stay until you feel okay." It took time. Eventually, Myra's breathing slowed. Her eyes began to blink slowly, like she was waking from a nightmare. Then she whispered, "Sorry." Kyle shook his head. "You don't have to be sorry." She sat up slowly. Her shirt slipped from her shoulder, and that's when Kyle saw them clearly. The scars, long glowing lines. Some curved like cuts. Others looked like brands burned into her skin. They ran down her back, her arms. And there were more, hidden under her clothes. Kyle's stomach turned. "What did they do to you?" He whispered. Myra pulled the shirt back up quickly, shame flooding her face. He didn't look away. "I'm not afraid of your scars," he said, "but I want to understand." Later, they sat at the table. Myra had drawn shapes on paper. Each one showed a machine, needles, lights, straps. She couldn't explain it all with words, but Kyle understood enough. "They tested you," he said softly. She nodded. "They hurt you." Another nod. This time, tears filled her eyes. Kyle clenched his fists. "Why?" She pointed to her chest, then to her head. Then she said, "Change? Change?" She tried again. "They made me different." Kyle leaned forward. "You mean they experimented on you to change you?" She nodded slowly. He looked at the scars again in his mind. Glowing, not natural. "Do you have powers?" He asked carefully. Myra looked down. "Sometimes." "Can you control it?" She shook her head. That scared her. More than the pain. More than the past. Kyle stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city was loud. Flyers passed overhead. Neon signs blinked. Somewhere out there, the people who hurt Myra were still looking for her. "I won't let them take you back," he said. Myra looked up. "You can't stop them." He turned to her. "I'll try. I'll fight for you." Myra was silent. Then, for the first time, she reached across the table and placed her hand on his dot. It was cold, shaky, but it was a choice. "I don't want to run anymore," she whispered. Kyle nodded. "Then we'll stand together." But across the city, in a silent control room, a red dot blinked on a map. A voice spoke through a comlink. "Subject 9 has been tracked. Location, human sector, Zone 8. A reply came. "Prepare a retrieval team." Back in Kyle's apartment, Myra stared at herself in the mirror. She touched the scar on her shoulder, then whispered her name softly. Not just Myra, her full name, something even she had forgotten until now. It felt strange, powerful, and somewhere inside her, something was waking up. Something the experiments had buried, something they feared. Asterisk. The city was quiet that night. Too quiet. Kyle sat on the old couch, lights off, listening to the soft hum of power lines outside. The only sound in the room was Myra's breathing, slow, steady, from his bedroom. But he couldn't sleep. Not after what she had shown him. Not after the scars, the drawings, The broken ways, she whispered, they changed me. He stared at the ceiling and heard her voice. Kyle. He sat up quickly. Mira was standing in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes glowing faintly blue in the dark. I can't sleep, she said softly. Kyle nodded. Bad dreams again? She nodded, then stepped forward. Can I sit here? Of course. She sat beside him, quiet for a while. Then, after a long silence, she whispered, I don't understand. You. He looked at her. What do you mean? You help me. You feed me. You let me sleep here. But you ask nothing. Kyle gave a small smile. Do I need a reason to be kind? Myra's eyes dropped. Where I come from, yes. She looked at his hands. Kindness is used like a weapon. They give it. Then take more. Kyle's voice was calm. Then let me be your first truth. She blinked at him. I don't want anything from you, he said. You don't owe me your body, or secrets, or service. Just stay alive. Myra covered her mouth suddenly, tears rising. She hadn't cried in front of him before. She whispered, They said I wasn't worth keeping alive. Kyle looked into her eyes. They were wrong. Outside, on a nearby rooftop, a small black drone hovered, silent. Watching Dot, it zoomed in, catching the moment. Mira leaned against Kyle's shoulder and softly said, Don't let them take me. A signal blinked. Target, located. Myra stood in the kitchen the next day, staring at the toaster. Dot clicked suddenly, and she jumped. Kyle laughed gently. It's okay. It just means your bread is ready. She looked down at the toast burnt at the edges, but she smiled. Hot, but good, she said, taking a bite. Kyle handed her juice. You're learning fast. She nodded. Because you talk slow. That helps, Kyle chuckled. Well, I'm glad something about me is useful. Myra took another bite, then grew quiet. She looked at him seriously. Can you teach me more? Of course. Language? She shook her head. No. Life. Kyle blinked. What do you mean? She pointed at the plant. Why does it live without? Fear? He followed her gaze. Because. No one wants to hurt it, he said. She nodded slowly. Then I want to live like the plant. He smiled. That's a good start. That night, she didn't go to the bedroom. She sat beside him again, close, quiet. Kyle, she whispered. Yeah? If I wasn't me, would you still have helped? Kyle looked at her carefully. I don't understand. If I looked different, if I had no powers, if I was just a girl on the street, I still would have picked you up. She closed her eyes. Why? He thought for a moment, then answered. Because the moment I saw you, I knew you didn't belong. In the trash, Myra turned to him. Her face was pale in the moonlight. She leaned closer. Then softly, barely louder than a breath, she whispered, Don't leave me. Kyle didn't move. I'm not going anywhere. But far away, in a dark control room, the retrieval team leader watched the footage on a screen. He paused the frame. Myra, sitting close to the human. A scientist beside him whispered, She's growing attached. The leader's voice was cold. She's the property of the Orion Genetics Authority. Prepare to engage at nightfall. Asterisk the knock was soft. Too soft. Kyle froze where he stood, holding a cup of tea in the kitchen. It was past midnight. No one knocked this late in Sector 9, not unless they wanted something. He turned toward the door, heart suddenly racing. Myra looked up from the couch. She could feel it too. Danger. Another knock. This one louder. Kyle whispered, Don't move. She stood anyway, barefoot, alert. And the third knock came, no longer soft. Boom. The door burst inward. A flash of light. 3 figures stepped in tall, armored, with glowing visors and metal rifles. Black suits, no emblems, no voices. They were here for her. Mira screamed, stepping back, but one of the soldiers raised a device. It sent a wave through the room. Kyle dropped the cup, his head pounding. Myra clutched her chest. Her legs gave. Out. The lead soldier stepped forward, raising a scanner. Target confirmed. Subject 9. Kyle, still dizzy, shouted, "Leave her alone." The soldier turned to him. "Step aside, human. This is not your concern." But Kyle didn't move. He stood between them and Mira, fists clenched. "She's not going with you," he said. The second soldier raised his rifle. "Interference. Will be punished." Mira forced herself up. Her eyes started glowing, brighter than before. "No!" she shouted. The air crackled. Kyle turned and saw blue light rise from her hands. The soldiers raised shields, but too late. A wave of energy exploded from Myra's chest, knocking the intruders back. The lights flickered. Windows cracked. The front wall trembled. Then it stopped. Myra collapsed. Smoke filled the room. The soldiers were groaning, but alive. They weren't finished. Kyle grabbed Mira in his arms. "Stay with me." Her eyes opened. "Just a little. I didn't mean to." "I know." He looked around. No time to think. He carried her out the back exit into the alley, into the shadows. They ran through the broken streets of Sector 9. Mira's steps were weak, her breath shallow. Kyle held her hand tightly, guiding her through dark paths only. Locals knew. Behind them, the black suits followed, quiet, relentless. Kyle ducked into an old garage, locking the door behind them. Inside, a figure waited. "Long time," said a voice. Kyle raised his head. Zan. A human woman in goggles stepped from the shadows. "You in trouble?" Kyle glanced at Mira, barely conscious. "Yeah, the kind with guns and black masks." Zan looked Mira over. "That her? The alien thereafter?" Kyle didn't answer. Zan took a breath. "Come, I've got a ship, but you owe me." "I'll pay," Kyle said. "Just get us out." Zan nodded. 10 minutes. Be ready." Mira woke inside the cargo ship. She was strapped to a soft seat, wrapped in blankets. Kyle sat beside her, bruises on his face. "Where?" She whispered. "Safe. For now," he said. Her lip trembled. "I hurt them." Kyle took her hand. "You protected us. That's not the same." She looked away. "They'll follow." Kyle nodded. "Then we'll stay ahead." The ship lifted into the sky. As the city lights faded behind them, Mira looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "I didn't mean to bring danger," she whispered. Kyle held her hand tighter. "You didn't bring danger, Mara. You brought meaning." Back in Sector 9, the retrieval team stood among rubble. The commander clenched his jaw. She activated her core. One of the soldiers nodded. First full pulse since the lab. The commander stared at the empty street. "She's growing stronger. The human is making her stable." He tapped his comm. "Deploy new orders. She is not to be destroyed. She is to be controlled." A pause. "By any means necessary." The stars stretched like lines across the window. The ship jumped into hyperspace, silent and endless. But inside, Kyle was breathing hard, his hand pressed to his ribs. He had been hit during their escape. Not a full blast, but enough to hurt. Myra sat beside him, her hands glowing faintly. "Let me heal it," she whispered. "You've already done too much," Kyle said, smiling weakly. "Rest." But Myra leaned closer. "No, you protected me. Now I protect you." Her fingers touched his side gently. A soft blue light spread through his body. The pain faded. His breathing slowed. "You didn't have to," Kyle began. Myra looked into his eyes. "I wanted to." Hours passed. They were alone in deep space now. Safe for the moment, Zan, the pilot, stayed at the front of the ship, away from them. She knew better than to ask too many questions. Kyle and Mira sat in the back, wrapped in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. Then Mira spoke. Where are we going? Kyle pointed at a small blinking dot on the map. A green planet. No cities, no scanners, no soldiers. She nodded. Can we stay there? If you want. She looked at her hands. I don't know how to live free. I only know how to survive. Kyle turned to her. We'll learn together. The next day, Myra found a small mirror in the ship's supply room. She stared at herself. The scars were still there, but fainter. The glow in her eyes was stronger now. Controlled. She didn't flinch this time. Kyle walked in quietly and saw her. Look different, he said. Mira turned. Do I look normal? Kyle smiled. You look real. Like someone finally becoming who they were meant to be. Myra's lips trembled. I was supposed to be a weapon. Then I guess they failed, Kyle said. Because all I see is someone who wanted to be loved. Later that night, Myra stood at the window, watching stars pass like ghosts. Kyle joined her. You should sleep, he said. I'm afraid I'll dream, she replied. He didn't push. Instead, he handed her something. A small object, worn. Round? A stone? She asked. Kyle nodded. I found it on Earth when I was a kid. I keep it when I feel lost. Mira held it tight. Thank you. Then she turned to him. I've never had anyone give me something just because. You've never had a friend, Kyle said gently. She looked up at him. Am I your friend? He nodded. You're more than that. She stepped closer. Then promise me something, she whispered. Promise you won't leave me. Kyle reached out, his hand brushing hers. I promise, he said. But across the galaxy, someone was watching. The commander of the retrieval team stood in a dark room, staring at a screen. She's adapting, the scientist beside him said. Faster than we expected. Her bond with the human is stabilizing her power, the commander replied. That makes her more valuable. Another voice chimed in. We found the flight path. They're headed for an unclaimed planet. Number. Protection. The commander smiled coldly. Then we strike while they feel safe. Back on the ship, Mira sat beside Kyle as he slept. She held the stone tightly in one hand, and his hand in the other. Her thoughts were clear for the first time in her life. She wasn't just running anymore. She was becoming someone new. And she knew now if they came again. She wouldn't hide behind Kyle. She would stand beside him. Together. Asterisk. The ship landed in silence. No cities. No towers. Just wide skies, soft wind, and green hills that stretched for miles. Kyle stepped out first, boots pressing into fresh soil. The air was clean, warm, no machines, no scanners. Just peace. He turned back. Mira? She stood at the ramp, eyes wide. She had never seen a place like this before. The sky was deep purple. The grass was bright green, and strange flowers opened as if they were watching her. Is this real? She whispered. Kyle smiled. As real as it gets. She stepped forward slowly, each step more certain than the last. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of being seen. Here. No one would come for her. They built a shelter near the river. Small dome-shaped house made from ship parts and local wood. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Myra helped with everything. She gathered stones. She learned to start a fire. She even planted seeds beside the house, unsure if they'd grow. Kyle watched her every day. She was smiling more now. Her laugh was soft, almost like a song. She wore a new dress Zan had given her. Her scars were still there, but she didn't cover them anymore. One night, as they watched the stars, Mira sat beside him on the hill. I still hear their voices. In my head sometimes, she said quietly. Kyle nodded. Me too. The past doesn't leave easy. She looked at him. Do you regret saving me? Kyle took a long breath. Then he turned toward her and answered with no hesitation. No. Saved me too. Mira blinked. I did? He nodded. Before you... I was just surviving. I didn't have anything to care about. But now, I wake up with a reason. Myra's eyes shimmered. You're the first person who didn't look at me like I was broken. Kyle smiled. You were never broken, Myra. You were just waiting to be free. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Then I want to stay free. With you? But that peace was tested one final time. A sound echoed from the forest metal against rock. Kyle stood quickly, grabbing a small pulse blade. Mira followed, her hands glowing slightly. They waited. Then, out of the shadows, a figure stepped into the light. It was not a soldier. It was a child alien, half-starved, lost. Behind her, 2 more stepped out, refugees, like Myra once was. She stepped forward, lowering her hands. Are you running too? She asked gently. The child nodded. Kyle looked at Mira, and she knew this place wouldn't just be home for them. It could be home for others too. She stepped forward and whispered, You can stay with us. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Just like that, the home they built grew. Weeks passed. The seeds Mira planted bloomed into bright flowers. The house expanded. More refugees came, humans, aliens, even hybrids. No one asked what you were, only who you wanted to become. Myra stood in the garden one morning, holding the stone Kyle once gave her. It was warm in her hand now. Kyle walked up behind her and placed his arms around her waist. We did it, he whispered. She turned, smiling up at him. We're doing it, every day. Then softly, as the wind carried petals through the air, she whispered the words he once gave her. Stay with me, forever. Kyle leaned his forehead against hers. Always. *The end.